President Trump met with New York Yankees players in the clubhouse on Thursday before attending a game. It's the first time in MLB history that a team started the game with one error.
Now, how did that not earn a nomination for an Emmy? How did that just seems to be unfair. Seth Meyers was not even considered for the Emmy Award for Outstanding Talk Show Host. Oh, well. It is the Chris Plante Show. Mike Opelka in for my buddy Chris Plante, who is right now waiting, I guess, to find out if he's selected for jury duty. You know, that's one of those things that we talk about when we live in a republic, a free republic. You have to face the risk that you might be called for jury duty. Those of us in the media, specifically in conservative media, are regularly called, and then when confronted with voir dire, the selection process, we are usually excused. And you usually get like a 3 to 5 year pass. Anyway, we'll try and get to everything today. It's, as I said, it's Mike Opelka. You guys, if you've been here a while, you might recognize me. But I'm glad to be back, honored to be here on this very consequential September 16th. A lot going on right now. Our president heading to England, where he is going to be involved in a state visit with King Charles and the royal family, and one assumes Keir Starmer and some of the other Brits, as well as some of the locals. Maybe Nigel Farage will meet with President Trump as well. He's currently leading in the polling because he wants to take over and bounce Keir Starmer out of there. We'll see what happens. You're welcome to join us at any time at 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. Topic du jour, main topic du jour. Well, we'll try and get to all of it, as I said. And in the aftermath of the horrific murder of our friend, my friend, your friend, Charlie Kirk, there's still a lot to discuss there. And there are some subjects that relate to the investigation into the killing of Charlie Kirk that I think are quite important, quite vital, and they relate to the First Amendment, which we will talk about today at length. I am a huge proponent of the First Amendment, and I think it's dangerous to even suggest any kind of restrictions on the First Amendment. And I think Charlie Kirk felt the same way. I believe Charlie Kirk is quoted several different times in several different places, on video, on audio, on social media, talking about the precious First Amendment and free speech.
Free speech is our birthright as Americans. When you have free speech, we're going to get closer to the truth, closer to the best way to govern, closer to the best polity for the country. You should be allowed to say outrageous things. You should be allowed to say contrarian things.
Yes, you should be. Now, that doesn't give you immunity from the consequences of saying outrageous things. There are consequences. There should be accountability for things that we say. Now, you can't be arrested for yelling fire in a crowded theater. That's been proven in the past. I know a lot of people quote that. I believe I'm correct on that. Someone will check with the almighty Grok and see if that's true. I think the case that came up about that, though, was proven that you can, in fact. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's a good idea. But free speech is something we have to protect. Free speech is something we have to allow people to say things that might offend us. Remember, that's what cancel culture was all about. So yesterday, the comments from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, have a lot of people up in arms. And there are some folks who are saying that, well, gee, maybe Pam Bondi's got a point here. No, you can't do this. We've watched England over the past several years eat away at free speech to the point where they are arresting people who are praying across the street from abortion clinics, praying silently. They're not on a bullhorn. They're standing and praying silently. and they've been arrested. There are thousands of people who are brought in and arrested for making social media posts that make one or two people uncomfortable to the point where they report them. We can't be doing that. Now, if you're calling for the assassination of the President of the United States or an elected official, yeah, I got a problem with that. I think we should talk to you. But the efforts to sit on free speech, we cannot permit. We cannot bend the First Amendment. My late father said, after the first, everything else is second. Everything else. And now we know the Second Amendment is to protect the First Amendment, but that First Amendment is, in fact, sacrosanct. And that's your SAT word of the day, sacrosanct. So we'll talk about this First Amendment. We will monitor what's going to happen in the Senate today as Kash Patel is going to be on the hot seat, and Adam Schiff, you have to be careful how you say that last name. Adam Schiff wants to grill him like a cheese sandwich. Adam Schiff, the guy who constantly told us he had evidence of Russian collusion. He'd held it in his hands and seen it. He's now convinced that Kash Patel's lied to him and wants to call him out. So we'll see what happens. Kash Patel will be speaking today. We'll give you the highlights of that Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. And I think Luigi Mangione, the guy that shot the healthcare executive, is due in court today. I wish we didn't have to cover these kinds of trials. I wish they'd just give us the outcome. We pretty much know what happened there. So we will see. I'm focused on a lot of things today, including, as I said, the president going over to meet with the king and have a state visit with our friends in England. And maybe one of the things the president will say is talking about free speech and the ability for Brits to vent their spleens in public and online without getting locked up while the rape gangs are just overlooked in England. It exists. You can look it up. Let us try and get to everything today. That's the mission. I want to try and get to everything. I want to talk about the fact that the president yesterday announced in that kind of late press event in the Oval Office yesterday afternoon, where he signed the memorandum announcing that we are going to be sending the National Guard to Memphis. And the mayor's actually happy about it. He's a Democrat, but he wants his city to be safer. The governor, a Republican, requested it, and the mayor's good with it. Hello, Illinois, Chicago, maybe you'll wake up to that reality. And while the president was signing that memorandum, he was also taking questions from the press. And we have some interesting questions from the media and the responses from the president. One of those was one of the things that I enjoyed greatly was the president talking about we smoked another drug boat. And I'm not talking about smoking it the way you would smoke a drug. I'm talking about smoking it the way you would smoke it if you're a member of the military. President Trump smoked a Venezuelan drug boat, bringing some deadly drugs into this country on behalf of some narco-terrorists. I voted for this completely.
First on Venezuela, what can you tell us about this Venezuelan boat that was taken out? And do you plan to provide proof that these were narco-terrorists who were on their way to the U.S.?
Well, we have proof. All you have to do is look at the cargo that was, like, it's spattered all over the ocean. Big bags of cocaine and fentanyl all over the place. And it was, plus we have recorded evidence that they were leaving. We've recorded them. It's very careful because we know you people would be after us. We're very careful. The military has been amazing. And General Kane showed me a little while ago the clip, but you could actually see it. But you don't have to see it because we have recorded proof and evidence. We know what time they were leaving, when they were leaving, what they had, and all of the other things that you'd like to have.
It's called the receipts. We bring the receipts. The president bringing clarity to the situation yesterday. This is the second of the attacks on the narco-terrorists who are trying to undermine America. And this one, again, a Venezuelan boat out in international waters headed to the United States of America. We have the conversations of the narco-terrorists, apparently. I watched the video more than once. And again, it's what I voted for. I am totally in on this one. So we'll see what happens with the president heading over to England today. One of the most interesting things that happened this morning, I was watching Morning Joe, so you don't have to. And they're very upset over at Morning Joe. And I'm not sure if they're upset about the name change, because I guess it's about to become MS Now. Joe himself was even saying it in a kind of a derogatory fashion, saying MS Now like that. And I don't know if he's happy about it, because no one seems to be able to explain what MS Now means. Seriously. MS Now. What does that mean? But the Morning Joe duo was trying to make fun of President Trump going over to visit with the King of England. And the reality is, I think it was back in February, Keir Starmer from England, the Prime Minister, came over and he handed a letter to Donald Trump in the Oval Office inviting him to a state visit. It was a letter from King Charles III. So it's not as if Trump called and said, hey, how about we do a state visit so I can look good? No, it was an invitation. Ahead of the deal we struck with England, the trade deal, one of the first ones that, it ended up with a 10% tariff on England, but it's one of the better deals for both sides. It worked out. So Morning Joe was trying to mock this. And I think Joe had a little bit of a Freudian slip while he was talking about. Check this out.
That's usually where Queen Elizabeth II did her best. She often would be sent to France when the Brits were having trouble with relations with the French. She would time and time again politically punch far above her weight. I wonder if we have the same thing here with Keir Starmer thinking it might happen to bring the president over to see King Charles and Queen Kamala.
Wait, what? Sorry, is that why we haven't seen Kamala Harris in a while? She has a new job?
To bring the president over to see King Charles and Queen Kamala.
You just insulted the Brits, too. I'm sure they're freaking out. They may not be that keen on Camilla Parker Bowles, but you just gave Kamala Harris a big upgrade. Anyway, we'll have some fun today as well. We're going to play a special segment throughout the show today called Democrats Say the Darndest Things. We'll share that with you as well. I want to get to some of the calls, so I'm going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll hit the phones. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plante on The Chris Plante Show.
Will you pronounce your name for me, please?
It's Kamala.
Kamala.
Yeah, just think of like a comma and add a la.
Okay.
Like Kamala, which we're used to.
Well, it's not the a. It's
ah.
Yeah, I know that, but
It's like
Kamala.
It's elocution lessons on The View, and Kamala Harris and Whoopi getting schooled by Kamala on how to pronounce her. Now, why are we even bothering with Kamala Harris? It's not like we're talking about the book. Why? Because Morning Joe apparently proclaimed Kamala to be the Queen of England today. It happened earlier.
To see King Charles and Queen Kamala.
Yeah, right there. And nobody on the set. And I think there were a couple of Brits. And then, of course, the language police, if you're a Republican, Mika. And nobody said Camilla. But if you would have been talking about Kamala Harris and said Kamala or something else, they would have, or Kamala, they would have corrected you instantly. So that was fun today. That's why we did that. All right, let's go to the phones. As I said, it's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plante on the Chris Plante Show. 888-630-9625. Larry's calling from Wilmington, North Carolina. Good morning, Larry. Hello, Larry. I can't hear Larry.
Hello.
Hello, Larry. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
I do. You're coming in loud and clear, brother.
Okay, sorry. Nice to talk with you, Mike. First time caller. Really like your content and all that on the radio. But I had a couple of thoughts I wanted to bounce off of you real quick, and then I'll hang up and let you comment on them. But I was really thinking about how the Charlie Kirk shooter was used almost like a tool, like the rifle. He was like a cog in the gear that got this a tragic event that with this kid was killed. And but I just wondering what you thought about that how the left had used him, and that at some point I'm wondering if this the killer is starting to feel any remorse yet, that maybe that he comes to realize how he was used by the left to accomplish this, and that now he faces the possibility of sitting on death row.
That's true.
If he comes to realize how he was used.
Well, we'll address that, Larry. Thanks for your call. One of the realities is, if we were to believe that the online social media post that was put up before the shooter, the alleged shooter, turned himself in, he did apologize to the people that were in that chat group, saying it was me at UVU, and I'm sorry for what I've done. Now, we don't know if that's actually attributed to him, and we won't until we get this through the entire adjudication and we see what the result of it is. So we will see. This could be the case of someone who is a useful idiot, to remember the words of the Soviets. And we're told that, I think it was on the Jesse Waters show last night, we were told that he is on a suicide watch. I would imagine that. Imagine that's happening. Let's go to Greg in Rockville, Maryland. Hello, Greg. Welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure. What's up?
Yeah, real quick. Yeah, appreciate it. Real quick. The Kamala thing, she's dropping the book. There was an excerpt published in The Atlantic. I'm sure you've probably seen that, where she basically says, we renominated Jill, and we respected Jill and Joe's decision, but that was recklessness. And now the knives are out. The Joe Biden people the knives are out for Kamala, and they are burying her, saying she was essentially ineffective, capricious, did not know what she was doing, only dived in for photo ops. And this woman
that was right. All of that was correct, Greg, and I'm up against the clock. So Opelka in for Plante. Chris Plante Show. Mike Opelka in from my buddy Chris Plante, who's attempting to avoid jury duty today. He's standing, I'm sure, somewhere, hoping they ask him a question about his politics and he'll be dismissed. I think he will be. I have been called 3 times, and all 3 times I was told that my services were not required. So I guess I'm worried that I'm due now. I certainly hope Chris does not get impaneled on some kind of a jury. I think that's the correct verbiage to use. But it is Mike Opelka, that's me, and for my buddy Chris Plante. And we'll try and get to everything today. Breaking news, Luigi Mangione. I don't like saying the names of accused murderers, killers, shooters on the radio, but that's the guy who was in court today for shooting the healthcare executive. And the terror charge was dismissed this morning. The charge of terrorism, which I'm actually okay with that, because I think they got him to rights on murder, and cold-blooded murder at that. It appears to be very well planned and plotted. He stalked the healthcare executive and killed him in the streets of Manhattan in broad daylight. So I think they've got him dead to rights, as it were. Now, he's not going to face any kind of death penalty because, let's face it, it's New York. So he'll likely be locked up for the rest of his life. And I'm fine with that, too. I know there's a cost to that, but it's not exactly a comfortable life. It's funny to me to see the people outside of the courtroom who've assembled. There are a whole bunch of people who want him to be released, and they want justice for Luigi. But the dumbest thing to me are the people who are wearing the green hats. I don't know if you've seen it. They're wearing green hats with the L on them. And they are kind of oversized, cartoonish hats. Why? Because they are for Luigi from the Super Mario Brothers video game and cartoon. So they think they're getting serious attention for wearing a stupid hat from a video game character. It makes them look really dumb. Just saying. But then again, you're out in front of a courtroom in New York demanding that a murderer, alleged, be freed because you think it's okay to kill someone who is an executive with a healthcare company and you disagree with how the company runs. So it's difficult to take you seriously on any level. This kind of dovetails nicely into this group of statistics that was released yesterday that shows that some of these younger generation kids are okay with violence when it comes to solving a political question. A great number of these Generation Z people, or what are they, Generation Next, are okay with political violence. I'm sorry, what? Does not make sense. Does not make sense at all. I'm going to grab a couple of quick calls here. Then I want to transition into another topic because it's a very busy day. There's so much going on today. Let me grab a couple of quick calls here. First is Brad, who's in Key West, Florida, listening on the WMAL app. I heartily recommend that you get the app and listen to the show wherever you are. Hey, Brad, welcome to the program.
Hey, Michael. I've talked to Chris a few times. We both grew up in North Chicago. We have a lot of very similar history. And you were just talking about him trying to get out of jury duty. Mm-hmm. And I was called for jury duty here in Key West for a murder case.
Wow.
And I told the court, I said, look, I'm not going to be able to stay awake. And they let me go.
You told them you weren't going to be able to stay awake?
Yeah, because I was in the police academy and all sorts of situations of me being in a courtroom or a situation where, I'm indoors and I got to stay awake for something. I don't stay awake, and they let me go. Wow.
Well, good for you. I'm putting that on my list of things, Brad, in case I get summoned again. I may add that. I did one time, the last time, I went up and whispered to the guy at the check-in. I asked for a deferral, and he said, why? And I said, 2 words. Explosive diarrhea. And he looked up at me because I whispered it, and he goes, okay, you're dismissed. We'll send you a notice again soon. But a quick question, Brad, where did you grow up on the north side of Chicago?
I grew up in Northbrook. I went to Glenbrook North High School.
Okay.
I was a rival high school of Chris Plante's New Trier High School. And, in fact, I just brought my beautiful half-age fiance to her first Cub game at Wrigley Field a couple of weeks ago.
Wow, good for you. Good for you. Chris and I grew up in the same neighborhood. I was a Loyola guy. He was a New Trier guy. One of my brothers went to Glenbrook South, and Glenbrook North, your alma mater, your high school alma mater, is in the news today because they are apparently denying new Turning Point USA club requests at Glenbrook North. So your former high school is going to be in the news, getting a lot of attention these days, Brad. Glad to have another North Sider out there listening. Appreciate you being there. And I'm sure Chris will appreciate the advice for jury duty. We'll see what happens on that. Thank you, Brad. Let's quickly go to Jerome, who's been on hold. Jerome, you were calling after we talked about President Trump's announcement that we smoked the narco-terrorists yesterday. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Hey, Trump never lies, right? When he said January 6th was a day of love, is that how you love people for over 3 hours and threatening people, huh? And attacking the police? Is that the new kind of love? When he said the immigrants were eating people's pets, where's the truth? Where's the evidence of that, Mikey? Hey, Mikey, where's the evidence, Mikey?
Jerome, do you want to have a conversation? Would you like to have a conversation? Would you like to have a conversation? No, you're not. You want to make scurrilous comments and spurless insults, and that's fine. You want to call me Mikey, and I don't call you Jerry. I just call you Jerome. It's okay. It's not going to work because you're the violent left. The only people who died on January 6th, the only person who died on January 6th was an American service person who was murdered, who was killed, Ashley Babbitt, who now is finally getting military funeral rights. So I'm sorry, Jerry. It's not going to work with me. But I'm glad you are on hold for a long, long time. So have a great day. One more quick one here. Gary in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Hello, Gary.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, sir. What's up?
Part of the problem with these children and kids today are they're raised up in a generation of video games that encourage the assassination, killing, and everything else. So they're built up, and, well, when someone like Charlie Kirk gets killed, it's nothing. And they have no remorse. They feel nothing because they think that's the way life is. I've seen some kids on video games that just think it's the coolest thing to kill people.
Well, here's an interesting point, Gary, and you bring up an important point. There are a lot of people who want to ascribe blame to the video game culture. When we grew up, we played the very politically incorrect cowboys and Indians, and we fought against each other in the neighborhoods and pretended to kill each other. And then when combat became a thing, when there was an actual TV show called Combat with the late Vic Morrow in it, we actually played combat running around the backyard with wooden rifles and chasing each other down and sometimes shooting each other with BB guns in the butt. But we didn't all become crazy mass murderers. And I kind of I parallel that same kind of attitude to the video game culture. Now, there is one thing, Gary, I'll give you. The isolation, the separation of the individual from the group. When we were playing Cowboys and Indians, we were outside together. We were playing with each other. So many of the video game players are isolated, alone. Now, they may be on a headset talking to each other, but in reality, these are people who have withdrawn from that collective, who have withdrawn from the group. And I feel there is a causation in that we could look at and say it is the isolation that causes more of the problems than the activity itself. The video games, I think, and I'm not a video game supporter, the video games are getting the bad rap here. The video games are being blamed when in reality it's what the video game does to remove the individual from a posse. And that is one thing that I encourage everybody to have, a posse, some way, shape, or form. You need a group with which you can commune on a regular basis. In our case, as kids growing up, the minute you got home after school, you crashed out the back door and you didn't come home till sundown. And you were hanging with your posse. Today, I'm on the golf course a couple times a week with my posse. And if I were playing video games by myself, I might worry about the fact that I'm withdrawn from society. Just a thought. Interesting that the video games get the blame. I don't necessarily think that's the answer. It's more about community, and there isn't a community. All right, I'm not going to get to the clip I wanted, so I might as well take one more call, and then we'll get to the clip before the end of the hour. Our buddy Jason is in Kensington, Maryland, joining us today. Hello, Jason.
Hey, g'day, Mike. How you going, mate?
I'm good. I'm just here, taking the piss out of everything, trying to anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're going to start with these schools, and that's where Charlie came in there, because the schools, are basically this whole generation of kids, once we pass on, there's going to be hardly anyone to sort of take the torch up, and the Republicans have really got to try and emulate what Charlie did, because, I mean, we're going to be going down the tubes if we've got the 80 to 90% of these students that are going to be, making policy in the future, because, Charlie was a guy who actually made inroads. I mean, you didn't see one Democratic leader going into an environment that was hostile to voice their policies, because they had the media to do it for them. They didn't have to do anything. So Charlie was the one, lightning rod, the one that actually started to sort of, make him think. And it's a shame that he's gone, because I can't really see anyone sort of stepping up and taking his place.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. He was a generational talent, and he was a unique soul. I met Charlie in 2014 when he reached out to me when I was writing at theblaze.com and said, if there's anything I can do, and this is a kid who just turned 20, if there's anything I can do to get you in touch with millennials so you can understand what the millennial mind is thinking, I'm happy to do that. And he was somebody I was in touch with regularly up until about a year ago, when he elevated into a new level in the stratosphere. There's one thing Charlie really harped on, other than his faith, which was so important to him. But he did harp on what I think is one of the critical issues in our American society, and that is the breakdown of a family from the standpoint of having a mother and a father in the lives of the children. Now, that doesn't mean a stay-at-home mom all the time, but just the fact that having both a mother and a father in a kid's life changes the possibility of the future of that kid, and ultimately changes the future of the society. And Charlie Kirk correctly identified it. And he was called a racist for it, because he pointed out the statistics that 75% of the black kids in the country did not have a father in the home. And I think that is just an absolute failing on our part as a society to point that out without any fear. Just my opinion, Charlie was right on that. If that lives on, if that thinking lives on, and we push that forward, then he will have done something good in addition to all the other stuff. I got to take a break. When we get back, first round of Democrats say the darndest things. I'll share it with you. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plante on The Chris Plante Show. It is The Chris Plante Show. Mike Opelka in for my buddy Chris Plante. Happy to be here. Thrilled to be here. Having a blast, as always, sitting in for my friend Chris Plante. Trying to get to everything. It's going to be impossible. I'm sure we'll miss out on something, but I will do my darndest. The president headed towards England, where he's going to have a state visit with King Charles and Queen Camilla. Not Queen
see King Charles and Queen Kamala.
I sit corrected. Thank you, Joe. Queen Kamala. I'm sorry. We've been pronouncing it incorrectly all these years. Good golly. But I also promised that we'll monitor Kash Patel being grilled by the Democrats in the Senate hearing, and we'll hear some of that vitriol. And I also said we were going to have fun with Democrats because they say the darndest things.
Democrats say the darndest things. Are you serious right now?
Yep.
Democrats say the darndest things. They make me laugh, they make me smile. I swear to God, sometimes I cry. Yeah.
Yes, Democrats say the darndest things, and we have examples every single day. We could probably do a 3-hour show on just Democrats saying the darndest things, but we have to try and cover as much of the important news of the day as possible. And one specific Democrat who's always saying the darndest things is Minnesota Democrat via Somalia, Ilhan Omar.
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. We should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
Yeah, well, statistically, I think she can make a case because of the population numbers. But if you go by a percentage of crimes committed, that's not true. But the interesting thing yesterday, President Trump was asked about Ilhan Omar while he was holding forth in the Oval.
Ilhan Omar, after his assassination, called showing her a reprehensible human being. Should she be stripped of her committee assignments?
I would say, I think she's a disgraceful person. I think she's a disgraceful person, a loser. It's amazing the way people vote. I know people from her area, maybe of the world. I don't know. They got here and they vote her in. It's hard to believe, but I think she's a disgusting person.
So President Trump would be all in on stripping Ilhan Omar of her committee assignments. I can't disagree with that. She is reprehensible. And if you want to know the real details of it, Benjamin Weingarten wrote a great book called American Ingrate. I think that's the title. I'll have to go double check it. And it details the story of Ilhan Omar coming to America and being treated to all of the benefits of escaping the hellhole that she lived in as a child and coming here and pledging all of the loyalty you're supposed to pledge when you're an elected official in this country, as well as a citizen. And I'd be all in on investigating Ilhan Omar. I'd be all in on hearing the real truth behind, did she actually marry her brother? And now Representative Steve Drazkowski of Minnesota, he's a Republican state rep, is saying that we need to do a complete investigation. I would love for that to happen. Let's get the truth. Put it out there.